you check in with the QR code or just check on the mobile app. I am introducing Ishma Valenti, and he will be presenting today.
Today, so I do the presentation here on post-traumatic slave syndrome. Joy DeGroy is the doctor who has really devised this and done the research behind it. I'm just a student of that. And what I like to start off with is not focusing on slavery. So many times, anytime we talk about Black history, Black people, we start with slavery. And so in the presentations that I do, I start with a little bit something different. So you'll see that as we go on. But I'll start with right now, coordinated to what we're here, we all serve children and youth in the community. We have 102,000 about children per year that will be incarcerated as an adult, tried, or sentenced. And as a day, 10,000 per day could be detained. And usually this is a 2 to 3 hour talk. But in this time that we just speak, 23 or so youth will be facing that fate while we're just talking right now. And a lot of people will be like, Ishma, is that serious? Is that a real number? Where'd you get that number? That's from the National Juvenile Justice Network. But actually, I take a conservative number. The real number is 250,000 that are tried around as an adult. And why does that happen? Where did that start? What's wrong with our justice system? Why do we have these perceptions? And so this is what we're going to talk about today, is a big chunk of why we have these perceptions, why we continue to treat Black people differently in our communities, and especially our Black youth, where that starts, and kind of the genesis of that, and how we can overcome that, some skills and some tools that we talk about at the end on how we can derive from doing that and where we can go from here. So I'll start off with Black History Month. A lot of people look at this and they say, really, Ishma, you're going to start bashing Black History Month? But every Black History Month program that I see usually, and every time we talk about Black History Month, again, we start with slavery. We talk about a few different people that are in an inferior position, and we always look at it from a point of white supremacy. So celebrating the same people in this inferiority complex continues to teach our children, continues to teach white people, Black people, brown people, everybody, that we come from just this small piece of history of being inferior, of being oppressed, and not living up to the greatness that really is Black and African history. So that starts everywhere. It starts in the media, it starts in our schools, but particularly all of our media that we see mainly just celebrate whiteness, white culture. Even when we look at the most significant that we know of, civilization in Africa, in ancient Kemet, or what we call Egypt, this is what we see time and time and time again. We see white people portraying ancient Egyptians. And so even when we're talking about pyramids, I get a lot into this, or great technological advances, we have whole shows dedicated to how aliens made things in Africa rather than just Black Africans that were there. And we'll go on days and days and days talking about this. For some reason, we can't believe that Black people did something. We'd rather give a credit to a freaking alien with no real proof, when all the proof is right there that Black people did it. So how Black people, how the ancient Egyptians saw themselves, it's very simple. You can go and look at the walls in Egypt. I've been blessed to be able to do some travels around the world, and it's very simple. Figure A here is how the Egyptians saw themselves. Ancient Egyptians at the times of the pharaohs when they were building these pyramids. B is the Indo-European. C is other Africans and other nations outside of Kemet. And D is the Semite. And that's how they saw themselves on the walls. A lot different from this image. And then when you do watch these shows, you will see sometimes black people use it as an inferior class of the slave class. Even taking that slavery perception way back in even ancient Kemet. I don't watch propaganda, but that's what we see in those films. And it's not people say, oh, well, that's just, how it is. Well, that's not by mistake. If anybody knows anything about the film industry, there's casting agents, there's a casting director, producers that make these decisions very, very intentionally. Okay? Well, let's go into history, not just how the Egyptians saw themselves, but we'll go back to the general history book 3, 30 AD, Diodorus of Sicily. My last name is Valenti. Got a little Sicilian in me that I don't know if he's a distant cousin, but anyways, this brother, we got the same nose, maybe. Right. But Diodorus of Sicily, direct quotes from general history book number 3. Now the Ethiopian, really quick, Ethiop, just in that age meant people of the burnt face, just black face. It wasn't a qualm or a diss on anybody. It's just history, how they spoke about Egyptians. Now the Ethiopians, as historians relate, were the first of all men, and proofs of this statement, they say, are manifest, for that they did not come into their land as immigrants from abroad, but were natives of it. So here they're saying, these Africans that they spoke to, they knew long before our modern science that they were the first people in the world, that they were the genesis of the world. It didn't take our European scientists thousands of years later to tell them that. They already knew it. They say also that the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians, Osiris having been the leader of that colony. Again, African people sending out their own scouts and colonists to colonize a different place in Africa. So this is what, again, this is from the ancient world, and we either look at these Greeks and these Romans as amazingly smart people that started all civilization like we like to give them credit for. It's either they were amazingly smart or they couldn't even tell the skin color of the people that they were coming upon in Egypt. But it's very, very clear. So I like to start with that because, again, representation, go to the walls of Egypt, this is how they're represented. Now, I'll start with that because a lot of times when we think about black history or Africa, we're always thinking of something very primitive, something very, very, it's a disdain in the psyche, instead of something that's amazing, like things we can't even do today and replicate, like pyramids. I'm going to try to go through this a little bit faster because of the time. Like I said, it's usually a 2 to 3 hour thing, but I'm going to squeeze into 60 minutes. So if I'm talking fast, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get through all the slides, y'all. Representation, what we get here, though, in popular science movies, if anybody's in the 90s, grew up watching some movies in the 90s, they know about Kane O'Dog and O.G. Bobby Johnson. I had to do it. I had to do it because it's so much of our culture. To where, again, these are the movies that get greenlit, these are the movies that they put out there, and that repetitious cycle and system of black people are dangerous, black people are violent, black people are drug dealers, and that's what you consistently see, even stemming into now. To where, even as an example, I say, even though these movies, don't get me wrong, had some good endings as where they had some messages, right? But that's not what most people see through the psyche. When I was 8 years old, probably too young, but watching these films at 9 years old, we were walking around saying we're O.G. Bobby Johnson. Not saying that we're the reformed Bobby as he becomes reformed and saves his son. Okay? It's an intentful thing. As that's a picture of him saving his son later. But this psyche, it goes and it breathes and it breathes and it continues and continues. So then when we have regular folks walking around now and they see a black person, the first thing and picture in their head is Kane. Or O.G. Bobby Johnson is this violent person. So much so that I know we have the term walking while black, right? Perceived as being dangerous. I said we can take that to all different facets. I'm sure maybe you've seen memes or different things where black people just mind their own business, whether it's at a barbecue, whether it's bird watching or anything, and there seems to be some type of always perceived danger from other people. I give an example, even I'm caught up in the day. This is black while watching the track meet. Black while watching the track meet. And there's a big, long story behind this, but police had to talk to someone. They had to question me, so of course they have to question me with shackles and doing a little abuse there instead of just talking to me. But they could talk to everyone else regularly. It wasn't a call on assault or a call on a drug dealer or a call that I had a weapon, nothing like that. Like I said, if I tell the story, it was nothing of the sorts. But that's how they had to talk to me, right? I didn't have my tie on, messed up. Should have had my tie on. But seriously, I like to go back to history, astronomy. This is back in not only ancient Kemet, but in the Sudan. Africans devised all of these things when it comes to astronomy. The start of the solar and lunar calendar, split the days into 24-hour cycles, predicted and accounted for the leap years. Thousands of years ago, found the circumference and the radius of the Earth off by 1 yard. Okay, seriously, and did this thousands of years ago. While I'm not throwing any shade, but while other civilizations were literally in caves, while other civilizations literally were claiming the world was flat. I'm not going to argue with any flat earther here today. You see me afterwards, maybe. But seriously, had the circumference of the Earth down to a yard thousands of years ago. And bam. This is the Napa Playa, the 10 square mile area. This is what we know as the oldest astrological observatory in the world. They have there's conservative 12,500 BC. It's much older than that, but I stay with conservative things because, like I said, I don't want to argue with anybody here. But again, this is not in Egypt. This is about 200 miles south of Egypt, okay, in the Sudan. And so what we like to say is Egypt wasn't the only beacon of light in Africa. Matter of fact, Egypt was just a flower of Africa with many other vines and many other plants that came from the south. And all of the evidence points towards not, which we've been taught so many times, is civilization coming north to south, but actually the other way, south to north. Architecture. I just like to go over this to some ancient African architecture. Again, I like to point these places out because I've actually been to these places. Again, if you travel the world, your mind kind of explodes. And a lot of times, whenever you see a picture of Africa, what do you see? Huts, one-story things, people just poor, and you see some flies, things like that, right? Well, these are ancient buildings of just amazing. You see, they started what we have the Colosseums, the castles, monoliths. And here, this joint right here, this is a pool. Brother had a pool in his castle. I'm serious. This pool, this is, these places are so long ago and thousands and hundreds of years ago that we forget that civilization has lived in Africa for a long time, but not as primitive as we think. And I'm, again, you're saying, why are we going back here? Because I'm setting this seed. We're trying to dispel what we always learn about black people started at slavery and at this transatlantic slave trade. That's not how it started, so we have to go back to where it started so that we can get some forwardness, okay? Some more architecture. These are some doors in Tanzania. Now, I've seen this with my own eyes, okay? And I didn't use my holiday photos because I thought that'd be self-serving. But so I was like, let me grab some other ones so I don't think that I'm just jeffing. But you see the real serious detail in these doors, right? People spending time on those doors are huge, colossal. Again, these aren't little small things in huts. They're huge, colossal doors. When I was trying to, they're tall as this ceiling when you go through them. Giants could walk through these doors, and the detail on them. This isn't a primitive place where people have time and the resources to make doors like this. They weren't just in huts, hunting and gathering. Okay? A lot of people have never heard of the Great Walls of Benin. I do this. This is just a representation of one of the cities with the walls. But the Great Walls of Benin, 10,000 miles long, 4 times the size of the Great Wall of China. Everybody says the Great Wall of China, oh, amazing architecture. Yeah, sure, it is, most definitely. But in Africa, you have something even more expansive and more great, the Great Walls of Benin. And again, this gives a little scale of the different countries, of modern day countries that it spans, but over 6 countries. And Africa is big. It's hard to get the scale of Africa. Like I usually like to put a map up here to get the scale of it, but it's so big. Just think of 3 continental United States can fit in Africa very, very, very nicely, very easily. Okay. I'll go really quick to education. Again, I'm moving through this really fast because I want to make sure I don't want to lose anything in this presentation too much. But the first universities, most definitely were in Africa. Actually, the Moors from Black African Moors brought the university idea to Europe and created the first universities, first libraries, first bathhouses, and all those great things. But philosophy, a lot of times, I was taught in my school, and like many people are taught, like my children that they were trying to teach the same thing, that all of our modern technology, all of our modern philosophy, thought, and high thought came from Greece, and then got transferred to the Romans. Well, where do these Greek people get this knowledge? Well, you look in their history, you look in their biographies, you look in their diaries, and the history, the Greek history, they're not ashamed of it, they're not shy. They brag about going to Africa to learn. They brag, it's like a beautiful boarding school. They go and they learn in what's called the mystery schools. And they go and they learn not just for a summer or for a year, they go for years and learn. And this is Pythagoras, Aristotle, Hippocrates, Socrates, Plato, all of these great thinkers that we give credit for starting modern civilization and democracy and all these high-level thoughts, studied in Africa at the mystery schools from Black Africans. Okay. Race as an invention. I can go deeper into this about the old Prussian civilizations where these colleges had started and turned race into this new invention. Because, as you see, the brothers in Africa had no qualms about teaching these Greeks. They come down and they teach them, no big deal. Actually, in Europe, the reigning thought of beauty was a black woman. I'll show some different examples, but they would make their goddesses in shape and form of black women, and they thought the black skin was so beautiful. Well, race wasn't a huge concept back in that day. We made it a concept. Certain people made it a concept. I mean, not push the blame on all of us. But certain people made it a construct. Why? Because they had to justify their new economic invention of the slave trade. You have to push back this cognitive dissonance that says, hold on, I'm supposed to be a good person. I can't enslave other people. So instead of enslaving people, you can think, or stealing people, I'm trying to stop using that word, but human trafficking people. Instead of doing that, you can think, oh, these people aren't important, they've never done anything, they're not even really human, they're subhuman, and so we can do this without a conscience. Okay? So it releases that guilt and accountability. That's what the race was meant. But black in Europe, I like to bring this up because it just proves the point that before we got this construct of race, it was not a big deal. We'll go over some of these, not only kings and queens, saints of the Christian faith and ruling class, but I'll go over just a couple of them. St. Maurice died in 287 AD. He died in Switzerland. If you go right now in Germany, there's major monuments. A lot of these cathedrals you go to in Europe, they have major monuments, pictures, statues, paintings of these black saints. Again, it wasn't a big construct. I show this to show that I'm not up here just talking. It's real. It's real. St. Alexander, again, he went from Ethiopia to Rome and become saint. These are canonized saints that in the Christian faith, that again, we have a little misconception of the Christian faith always as being a European religion, but the first martyrs of Christianity were Ethiopian, actually. Ethiopian lady. Black kings of Spain. So right up to 1492, the last of the black kings were pushed out of Spain from the Moorish ruling class, and then Isabella and the king went ahead and financed, what's that brother's name? That punk, Christopher Columbus, that's right. That's right. I'm gonna get in trouble. Don't cancel me today. Wait till tomorrow, and then it's all settled. But right before that, that murderous guy was financed, the black ruling class in Spain, or there was a black ruling class in Spain, okay, the Spanish Moors. And will this play? This is funny to bring up the next point, will it? Oh, there's no sound. If not, I can paraphrase.
We had
this
this problem on the last.
It's not the most important thing, but it's kind of funny. It's kind of fun. If y'all know Annie culture, it's kind of funny. Okay, it's cool. It's cool. Don't worry about it. I'll paraphrase. It's easy. She's with peers talking about how all this new wokeism, and this is a while ago, right? So they've been on this. But all this new wokeism, they want to make Santa Claus black now. They want to have black Santas in the hood, she says. And then she's saying Santa isn't black. Jesus is not black, and then he says, well, what is he? And then she has such a hard time because she wants Jesus to be white so bad. I know that's what the pictures we see everywhere, and Leonardo did a great painting or whatnot. But just the truth of the matter is, what we'll get into in just a minute, is it's just not the truth. And she has such a hard time trying to, Pierce is really pressing her on this, that Jesus wasn't white. And she just can't do it. You almost see her head explode trying to, keep this white Jesus construct in her head. She even hates on Santa. Well, she does. But I take it here because a lot of people don't know this, right? When we talk about whitewash, it goes real deep, okay? Because Saint Nicholas actually was a very devout Christian from the modern day realm of about area of Turkey now, right? He was a black man, black, tall, skinny dude. You see all around, you'll see pictures of Saint Nicholas. The brother got the Saint Nicholas kind of lore that we use now because the brother, he was real pious, and so he came from a real rich family. He got super pious and said, you know what? I'm reading the Bible. I'm not supposed to have all these possessions. I need to, live in poverty, basically. So he gives away all his possessions. And then anytime he gets a little bit of something, what he does, he goes and he gives anonymous gifts, right? Anonymous to anonymous, the greatest way of giving. And he was especially serious about giving these gifts to children, right? And so children would wake up, especially orphan children, and all of a sudden, they'd have gifts. Then that's where we get that whole, St. Nicholas. For some reason, now they felt like a chimney, but it was a little different. So we go from here to here, which, then and now. So even the St. Nicholas, she was going crazy. Santa isn't black. Yes, the original St. Nicholas was black. It's, again, just a fact of history. And a lot of people, when I say that, they're like, huh? How possibly? It's not me, it's just the history, right? Now we get into the Madonna and the Savior. And all around the world, all around Europe, you will go in the ancient world and you will see black Madonnas and a black Jesus. It's very evident when you go in your Bibles. We just established very plainly how the Egyptians saw themselves. If you go in the Bible, we know that the brother hid in Egypt for a long amount of years. If you're a Bible type person, it's kind of hard to be blonde, blue hair, or blonde, blue eyes, and around a whole bunch of black people hiding. If you went to Egypt to hide, okay? So this is very simple. Even the Pope, if you look at the Pope, the leader of the Catholic world, and they say the closest person to God. That's just what they claim. But you see who he prays to. It's very evident. He knows what's popping. Not all the people who follow the Pope know what's popping, but it's very evident. Okay? And so why I bring this up, some more black Jesus all around the thing. It wasn't just a sitcom back in the day. It's a real thing. All the depictions of Jesus before that Leonardo picture that he had modeled on was and were black. His apostles black as well, right? So I bring this up because it's important. One time I was speaking with a priest, and the father says to me, Ishma, how can we really stop racism? How can we really stop this problem? I said, you know what, man? I was talking just like that. Everybody else calls me father. I was like, you know what, man? If you were to, and no disrespect, this is for equals. And so I was like, if you were to put up a black Jesus in your parish and incentivize all the other parishes around to put up a black Jesus, you could stop racism in your group of followers in one generation. Just in one generation. Close your eyes, what do everybody see when they see Jesus? They see that Leonardo picture of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, maybe the one with the heart coming out and whatnot, right? Right, the skinny dude. But seriously, if you were to close your eyes and you see a black person as Jesus, as your Savior, darn, it's much harder to be racist. That cancels out O.G. Bobby Johnson and Kane immediately, right? And actually would have never had us getting into that start of that cycle, just to start off with. And so I show these because it's that important. It goes deep. It's not just Santa Claus. It's not just our movies. It's the very thought of who you think of when you think of God. For Christians, that is. Now, moving on, before we get into some other things, I'd like to bring this up. Brother Mansa Musa, which I'm not bragging that he was richest man in the world or whatever like that. But I like to really talk about how he became king was because before him, his brother decided to take 300 ships full with gold and provisions and really, really smart folks and travel the Atlantic Ocean to go over to lands to the west. And 3 of those ships came back and said, look, your brother's staying, now you're the king. And so this brother, Mansa Musa, Mansa literally just means king. So King Musa becomes king because his brother went to Central America. And we went. Well, we've always been taught that, of course, nobody came over here. Sometimes they give some Vikings some credit. But never will you hear about African transatlantic travel until that human trafficking event. Right? But it was much before that, and we have a whole bunch of evidence. I've been here as well. When you go down to, this is in central Mexico, in the jungle, Teotihuacan. If you look at the pyramids in Egypt, the pyramids here, the Great Pyramid in Egypt, the same exact base perimeter as the Pyramid of the Sun. And then you go to the second pyramid, same exact base perimeter of the Pyramid of the Moon. Those aren't coincidences. Now, again, I like to go and talk to the indigenous people from there, right? So I got 3 tours while I was down there. I took the state tour, I took a self-guided tour, and then I took a tour with the indigenous people there, who've been there for centuries, who are actually people that live there, been there for centuries, and they have grandparents, great-grandparents that have told them what has happened, what happened. And their story, wildly different than, of course, the state guided tour. They told me very simple. Said, it was very simple. Africans, he said, he was black, he's like, Africans, he was like, yeah, your brothers. They taught us how to build these. They came over and taught us how to build these. Now when it comes to the calendars, and when we have these Mayan calendars here, with the lunar calendars and 12 months, there's another space, you can kind of see it here, where all these little kind of mini pyramids, they go, and there's 12 of them. And they listen to the indigenous people there, they tell you that represents the 12 months of the year. And we learn this again from travelers, black travelers, way from the east, coming over and showing us this. So again, I'm not up here just talking about what I believe or think, right? This is what the indigenous people were telling me who lived there. And I'd much rather take their knowledge than, like I said, I'm not hating, but than the colonizers' knowledge, right? These are the Olmec heads and Tulum. If you know anything about those, or see anything about those, I don't want to be stereotypical. It's very easy to see what type of person this is. Now, it's a black guy. I mean, it's very simple. We don't have to mince words here, right? What the heck is a black guy, big statue doing from pre-Columbian times in Central America? How, Sway? If y'all know the interview, maybe not. But seriously, then in the back, we have the braids, 7 braids. 7 is a very significant number in Africa as well. Actually, these pyramids had 7 layers as well before they were a lot of times demolished by the conquistadors. That's another thing. And again, this I'm not going to read all this, but these are just a bunch of facts from amazing scientists that have so much evidence. Very, very well researched evidence on the transatlantic travel of black people before Columbus and of course way before the transatlantic slave or human trafficking event. Okay, and I mean there's so much from linguistics to botanical research, archaeological research, different artifacts, everything. I mean, there's so much. I mean, the botanical research is out of this world because we know that certain plants couldn't have made the journey without someone taking them. So it's amazing, and I can provide this to anybody that wants it because it's really, really amazing, fascinating history. If anybody really wants to learn some more on that, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, just how it sounds, I promise. Ivan Van Sertima, he's an amazing researcher that does amazing work on this. Just in Kansas City, not too long ago, you got, they had a really great Mayan exhibit there as well, and they got these different sculptures where they have the Nubian knots, and they make a big deal of the hair texture being different. And it's a shame because they had this thing in Kansas City, and I hate bashing things, but it was like $50 a person to get into or something. They really price out a certain demographic, which just sucks. That only certain people can go and experience these things. But they made a really big deal about the difference in sculptures and hair textures. And so this brother right here, they made a big deal about the kinky hair with the Nubian knots, which again are just very, very, very telling of a black presence in Central America. Before then, another sculpture of my boy there. It's just very simple to see. Very simple to see. I like to get into art a little bit because when you think about the next stage, this gets into our perceptions. Again, we have art. Think about, a lot of times I do this, but I won't do it right now just because of time. I say, name an artist, name a famous artist. Everybody says Picasso, everybody says Van Gogh, right? And you'll never hear anybody say a black artist usually, which is just sad. But, and when we look at these, we'll go from the left of some Picasso's work, and here, West African mask. Picasso's work, West African mask. Same thing, Picasso's work, West African mask. He went to West Africa, he had a very totally different style before he visited Africa. After he visited Africa, he came back, all of a sudden with a new revolutionary style. Swagger jacket, that's what we call that. And again, it's just a show of these cultures of great art semblance, but we always will say Picasso, but we'll never, like I said, it's very hard to get a group of people to talk about a black artist. Of course, there's amazing black artists. We can look at John T. Biggers here. Just beautiful, beautiful art, but it's not what we think about when we think about art. Haley Woodruff, again, really wonderful, amazing art. And so when I talk about this, when we talk about caregivers or teachers, right, you see your black kid in this classroom, he or she is doodling on the paper, right? And then a lot of times, we'll talk about this later, but, oh, this kid is not paying attention. This kid is lazy, doesn't want to pay attention to the work. The kid is being defiant, right? Well, and then again, we look and now say the white kid, he's doing the same doodling or she's doing the same doodling. Oh, let's get them in arts and humanities class. Oh, they may be the next Picasso, the next Van Gogh. Our perceptions mean a lot. We don't see people as the same. We don't see the talent and the genius in everyone, and our perceptions go exactly to somewhere negative, which is a shame. I like to bring this up because we'll get into this as well, of who we make our heroes, which I think is super important. So this says here, y'all can read it, Hitler was an artist, he used to paint in his leisure time. Like, oh, cool, Hitler's an artist. Like, you should look at some of his art, right? Because he's an artist, he's a painter. No, exactly, no, let it go. Bad people are bad people, right? He's a bad dude, did bad things. Bad people are bad people, let it go. We can talk all day about how Hitler was an amazing economy strategist, how he took Russia out of World War I, brought them back to the zenith of the economic structure in Europe, and all these things, right? Why do we not focus on that? Because he's a murderer. He's a mass, psychopathic, genocidal murderer, right? So we don't uphold him as somebody special, even though he did some things that you could say were positive in German history when it comes to economics or when it comes to lifting them out of their disdain poverty that they were in after World War I. We don't make a hero out of Hitler. Germany doesn't even make a hero out of Hitler, right? But in contrast, then why do we make heroes out of these human traffickers, these rapists, these murderers, and these brutalizers? It wasn't. It's gonna mess up the thing on here. But we know for a fact that George Washington owned over 350 people himself. Owned over 350 people. We know that he was a rapist. We know that he was a brutal guy. We used to get taught that he had wood teeth. Actually, bang the teeth out of one of his human trafficked people and make dentures out of those. But he's gonna be, I know, gross, right? I saw a face over there like, yeah, for real, yeah, for real. But for some reason, we're gonna go in every school in LPS or in private schools, wherever, and there's gonna be big plastic pictures of these people, right? Now, I know there's a difference, right? Germany, the Nazis aren't still the ruling class. These guys still are the ruling class. So I guess that is the difference, but still it doesn't mean that we have to continue this, knowing this. With Andrew Jackson, sorry that things are off. I went from Keynote to PowerPoint. If anybody's a Mac person, you know it gets messed up. But He presided over the extermination of 40,000 Aboriginal Americans here. Like, when we know he killed, his death count is redonkulous. And again, I give conservative numbers because I don't like to argue on my presentations. So we know that these are bad people. Abraham Lincoln, we always put him up in high esteem. And he freed the slaves, like, right? Well, Abraham Lincoln, we know he married Mary Todd. We know back then that women did not get possession of things. We know that when it came to inheriting things, they didn't get possession. Mary Todd's father was the largest slave owner he's the largest human trafficker, in Kentucky. And when he died, that inheritance went to Abraham Lincoln. That's a lost bit of history. We don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. But then he became, by transfer, the largest slave owner in Kentucky. But he says, these are his own words, so I'm not bashing on him. This is just what he says. There is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together. While they do remain together, there must be a position of superior and inferior. And as much as any man, I am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. It's not my words, it's Abraham Lincoln's words, right? I know during Black History, a lot of times he gets plastered up there too, like he's the savior. Another one. I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. Again, let's stop holding up these folks like they're heroes. And I'll tell you why that's so dangerous in a little bit as well. Y'all know about General Lee, we can get over that, but I just like to say that in many states, if you look up your Walmart or something, or one of those businesses, they'll say ours may be different because we're celebrating General Lee Day. They do that the same day as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Just in spite of it, brother. Thomas Jefferson owned over 600 people. We know he raped and sex trafficked an 11-year-old, Sally Hemings. They like to put that into some type of weird love story. But we're all adults. We know what consent is. We all, I'm sure many people have daughters here, and I'm sure that nobody would think that 11-year-old can consent to any darn thing, right? Matter of fact, we know that he had a cellar type chamber that he would hold her in, and where she lived most of her life. And now these days, you watch the news, you hear about, or you watch on TV, you got this guy that's holding a little girl in his little dungeon or whatnot for years. And how do we look at those people? Like despicable, crazy human beings, correct? Why do we look at him like he's some type of hero? Why? It's so weird to me. And as long as I'll say it, because as long as we continue to look at these guys that are heroes and great men and somebody to be admired and put up on our school walls, as long as we're saying that they're right, then who's wrong? Obviously, the black people that they're doing that to. Obviously, the natives that they're doing that to. If little black girls to sit up there and watch and look at Thomas Jefferson up at the side, we know what he did to girls that look like her. What are we telling her every single day she walks into that school? And we'll get into that when we get into the stats of the graduation rates and things like that, and why a lot of times we're not where we should be. But as long as we keep on telling them that they're right, we're telling these other folks that they're wrong. Okay. The Tuckahoe Plantation, boy, home of Thomas Jefferson, at least 68 human trafficked people on the property where he grew up. And like I said, this isn't just a black problem, white problem. Tuckahoe Plantation, everyone is impacted. This is from their brochure because they do weddings here. Right? They do weddings here. If you go down south, you see a lot of these old plantations are wedding venues. People sign up. I think the waiting list is something like 3 years to get married here. To get married here. To get married here, like I said, everybody's affected. Now, let's take this over to another atrocity. Let's take Auschwitz. Could you imagine the uproar if somebody wanted to go and plan a wedding at one of these concentration camps in Germany, in Europe? Could you imagine that? Like, would you even think about that? Oh yeah, I'm trying to get married at Auschwitz. Yeah, let's go. Let's get the thing together. Get my wedding planner to come, set something up real nice. I can see it right now. The table there, the white flowers up here, right? But for some reason, we do that at this concentration camp. Again, because as long as we keep on saying that he's right, then this is acceptable. Then that's okay. But we've already established that somebody like, what's his name, Hitler, that he's wrong, right? Right? We've already established that. What makes them different? Hitler did that to white people. these guys did it to black people and natives. We've already established throughout what I've showed you that we don't value them because we don't know any true history. Some I just try to show you. I know it's been just a little short time. John Brown. I like to bring up Brother John Brown. I really like bringing up Brother John Brown because Brother John Brown was another very pious man who was reading his Bible and was like, there's no way that I can. He really wanted to confront that cognitive dissonance. He's like, how can I be a pious Christian and believe in God and all this when I see all this catastrophe happening around me? I see human trafficking, people being beaten, raped, and sold. How can I do that? And so we called this guy radical, and he started the radical abolitionist movement. He was a very big part of that and helped to start the old Republican Party. I'll say old Republican Party because none of these political parties are what they were back then, right? Just so we don't get twisted, right? But two of his sons were killed at Harper's Ferry raid. Harper's Ferry raid was definitely the precursor to the Civil War. Okay, Alan and Barbara May came from Nebraska City. Used to work with him extensively. And why I bring him up is because our history, lots of times, if you heard anything about John Brown, usually what you've heard is the C word. They call that boy crazy. They're like, oh, John Brown's crazy. He was crazy. So damn crazy because he believed that people shouldn't be enslaved. So crazy because he believed that abolition was the way to go. So crazy that he would even fight for other people to be free. That's how crazy he was. Matter of fact, so crazy that even my son, when he came home from school, was like, Dad, you know what they're doing, having us do with John Brown? They're talking about John Brown. They taught us about John Brown. I said, okay, what did they teach you, boy? He goes, well, we were having a debate. We had one side saying, was John Brown crazy? Or was John Brown not crazy? Or was he in the middle? This is the debate that schools or teachers or people teaching history are having about John Brown. Again, what makes him crazy? Compared to, I said, well, man, it would be great to maybe have that conversation about Thomas Jefferson or about George Washington. Seems pretty crazy to bust out somebody's teeth and use them at my home, or to hold up an 11-year-old girl and be a child rapist, a pedophile, and be glorified for it. That seems crazy to me, not trying to free people. Racism is taught. Anybody seen this movie? You know, Chadwick Boseman. He's Jackie Robinson in this film. But it's just showing basically there's a boy who kind of wanted to be a fan, and then what happened was this guy, he starts calling Jackie Robinson all sorts of N-words, throwing it out, berating him, all these racial things. Oh, we got a little bit of that. And with just some time, I'll just talk over here. So basically, he starts berating him, and then once the son starts doing it, eventually he learns it and sees it, then he starts saying the same thing. He sees everybody else doing it, and then he just copycats it. So, and I'll just for time, I'll just keep going. But he just goes, but it's taught. It's a taught concept, right? And when we're teaching it, whether it's right in your face, like Jackie Robinson joined, or like these horrible lynchings that we'll see, or whether it's subliminal by putting up Mr. Thomas Jefferson like he's your hero, it's taught. Again, if he's right, then these black kids are wrong. If and you see here, these aren't, what we like to say, these aren't like the hillbilly types, right? These aren't guys out here with the overalls and no shirt under them and all dirty and a little straw coming out their mouth, like, right? No, these are upstanding citizens of the community. See the brother, pretty sharp. The hat's dope. He's going right, but they put on their Sunday best to go lynch folks. That construct, and then so now what is she learning? Okay, and we know that these aren't the distant history. Right? Our things may look old. This one was from 1935. We have things from the 50s, 60s, and all that. But we know, for example, my grandfather on my mother's side, he was born in 38. Right? And so, I mean, people are living today that were going to these things, but it's really hard to believe that, great-grandma might have been this little girl, right? And then before that, she was maybe a teacher. And when you grow up with that consistent narrative of, again, black people haven't done anything, they will never do anything, and these horrendous things, that's that taught racism we're talking about, whether it's right in your face or it's subliminal. Now, how we run through that into today's system, when we talk about the post-traumatic slave syndrome, it affects everybody. This isn't something that's just something to black folks, and I wish I had more time because I showed some slides and some videos of George Roy really going over this and how very close to post-traumatic stress syndrome, how different people act and the symptoms of it, right? I go at a more large scale of how everybody's affected. And so these are, I know from 2016 to 17, but how we issue the tickets. A 1 in 10 chance of getting a ticket if you're black in the LPS schools, 1 in 68 chance of getting a ticket if you're white in LPS schools. Now, we know just like many stats, it isn't like black people use drugs more or do the crime more or whatnot. It's just that they're perceived differently. And if you go through your whole life, again, perceiving that this black kid just came from slavery, hasn't contributed much, see images of him getting lynched over and over again, you close your eyes, your savior is white, everything that's good is white, then it's much easier to write him off as bad, and now this brother gets a ticket, or this sister gets a ticket. The stats will show over and over again. The in-school suspensions, the out-school suspensions, this just basically shows how, for some reason, here, the black kids here in LPS, it's much harder for them to get the in-school suspension, but to get out-school suspension so much more. And when we look into these things about we talk to LPS about what is exactly going on, it's a lot of the same things that are happening, the same offenses. It's just that black kids are getting thrown out of school. The teachers, they're dangerous. They're more afraid of these black kids. These kids, for some reason, pose more of a threat to them. And it's not hard to understand why. When Thomas Jefferson is right, he's the real threat, but for some reason, little Stacia is thrown out because we perceive her as the threat. And it goes on and on. We'll look at the graduation rates. This is from 2016 to 2020, but in 2020, everybody's graduating about at 83.9, which is called 84%. Native folks graduated at 41%. Black folks at 70%. White folks right at 88.6%. And you'll go along, you'll see the year before that it was 64% or 65% for black folks. Pretty always consistent over here on this white side of the graduation. And again, it's like, well, why don't the kids graduate? Why aren't they staying in schools like we want them to? How come they're not achieving up to that level and things like that? Subliminally, what are we telling our kids every time they walk in that school? And some people may say, oh, Ishma, that's over, that's not very important. But it is important. You don't find importance in yourself. Why are you finding importance in your education and where you're going in the future? Because everything that you've been told is just something negative. So, and matter of fact, I might just feed into those OG Bobby Johnson and Kane stereotypes that I showed at the beginning. Because that's going to be more successful for me, actually. We'll talk about the black family and traumatized and governed into economic failure. This is a picture, this is actually in Topeka, Kansas, at the Monroe School. I've been here as well. This is the site of the Brown versus Board of Education, a historical site. This is one of the schools used in that case that Thurgood Marshall so wonderfully made a case for. But some of the downfalls that happened was after this school was desegregated because of the Brown versus Board of Education landmark case, what happened was the next year, the black teachers all got this letter, basically saying that due to the new thing that's popping, you're not going to have a job anymore because it's going to be integrated and you're not going to teach the white kids. Now, let me tell you a little bit about these teachers, which was amazing. This elementary school here, there was, majority of all these teachers had master's degrees. A lot of them had doctorate degrees. How many people have kids in elementary being taught by people with master's and doctorate degrees? It's very few. I mean, I didn't have any examples. Very few, but at this school, these weren't just regular teachers, these were masters and doctorate level people that got this letter saying that you're just not going to have a job next year. And so the economic, even when something perceived as good and advancement, economically, it was hurting black people. I think we took out, really quick, our brother Martin's going to say something. Before that, that's why I think it's so important. Part of what we need to do is to be really encouraging our youth to look into HBCUs and to understand that there is an option. There is historical black colleges and universities that you can go to, and you don't have to deal with some of those barriers that you do at a PWI. Because, for example, a kid that comes to a historically black college university, an HBCU, will graduate from freshman to senior in 4 years, 80% of the time. 80% of the time. Flip that around, kids that go to a PWI, predominantly white institution, from freshman to senior in 4 years, drop out, only graduate 25% of the time. 25% of the time. Now, you say a whole bunch of different factors, but men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, right? And so that's why I think it's super important to show black kids and to expose them to HBCUs and to that option, right? And it's not just to show a different world, if you know about a different world. But I tried. But seriously, it's real life. I take a group in the summers to go. We just took a group of 9 boys that just got back from. We went all through Texas looking at HBCUs and Oklahoma to be at Langston. But I think that's super important. Right here, I won't do the whole thing just because of time. But Martin Luther King Jr. is going to talk about how we've been governed into poverty. A lot of people say just pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps. He said it's basically criminal to tell somebody to pull themselves up with by their own bootstraps who weren't even allowed boots. Seriously. And so he talks about really quick about how white peasants from Europe, they're brought here and basically coddled. And I know I'm like, dang, before you're going to go there. Well, when we talk about the Homestead Act, that was free land, free equipment, free schooling. To all you had to do is say, I'm going to farm this land. And so they were willing. America was willing to give the immigrants from Europe and other folks free land, but not willing to give their own black people here that built the country the same advantages. And we look at some of these stats here. 46 million people, about 1/4 of adult U.S. population, are direct descendants of an original Homestead Act property. And that builds wealth. We already know how many people in here, they own their home, and that's their biggest equity. Most people in here, yes, some other people might be balling, but a lot of people's biggest sense of equity is their home. That's how you build equity. You have your home. You can flip that bad boy, get even a better home, because you can sell it, you're going to get something good off the market and keep moving on up. You can loan against it. You can take out a loan for a school against it. You do all these sorts of things. Well, a lot of that wealth started with this original land ownership of the Homestead Act. More than 270 million acres were given away by just signing a name to a piece of paper and filing for free. And it gave virtually free land to 1.6 million white families and then about 6,000 black families. See the disparity of the difference in there. That's a huge, big head start. That's a big head start. And a lot of people, I'm not blaming, I'm not saying, it's just the truth of the matter of why we're here, what we're here for. Why were those people given that same land? Well, again, that perception. Oh, they're lazy, not going to do anything with it. They're not worthy of it. They don't know what to do with it. All those things. Again, it comes back to who we're making our heroes and who we're not making our heroes. We talk about housing segregation. Again, it feeds into even in Lincoln locally. I like to talk about while I'm in Lincoln. By 1916, all the race clauses were in the deeds of the homes. Even in the New Deal era, we know about the FHA loans are 98% given to white families. We can talk about redlining another time, but even up until 1976, I have the stats from one of the Zimmerman, one of the great historians here. 1976, y'all know the historic, you may know if you're from Lincoln, the historic Sheridan neighborhood, right? In those deeds and those clauses, the house you still couldn't rent or sell to a black person up in 1976. And that's, 76, people's discoing and all that, right? But those were true segregation still happening, even in Lincoln, Nebraska, right here. And so that's one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in Lincoln. They couldn't grow equity in there if you were black. And we'll talk, I can go on, but I know we don't have so much time, I gotta keep going. Home ownership makes a difference. Look, these numbers are just atrocious on how much more wealth that white families have compared to black families, and it all stems on having that equity from the home. So home ownership is very super important. And I'm going to go through these fast because I want to get to some of these other, I can go with the time bill, but I'm going to get to Some of these other ones here, again, as we see consistently, we'll see disparities in stats. African Americans accounted for 4% of the city's population, so this is from 2015, 2016. About 1 in every 10 drivers pulled over in that 2016 year that were black. 1 in every driver pulled over were black in that year, but they only count for 4%. It should have been 4 out of every 100, not 1 out of every 10, right? And again, that comes from that in our minds of, oh, and I work with police all the time, right? I'm not a police hater, I'm not a defund the police guy, right? I'm a let's get better systems guy. And so I work with police hand in hand. I got friends that are police officers, so I'm not a bashing police dude. But when we talk about it, I have a conversation with them, and I have police that are very honest with me and say, yeah, I see a black guy rolling or walking, and I'm like, that seems kind of suspicious. I'll check him out, like, what do you mean you see suspicious? Like, what is suspicious about the black guy walking or just rolling around, right? And so those things are in our minds, again, from all this stuff that I was showing up earlier, of us either not knowing about great African history or only knowing about negative African history. I can get into these. This is a bunch of news articles about how we perceive things. Even in our newspapers, our media, how we do things. The white suspect, Santa Barbara shooting suspect, was a soft-spoken, polite, gentle man, as the ex-principal says, right? Somebody did a school shooting. Black man, Ohio man was carrying a variable pump air rifle, not a toy, when cops killed him. Attorney General, that was, goodness, it's gonna escape me because there's so many unjust killings. But the brother in Cleveland, goodness, it's gonna, excuse me? Yeah, the part, it looked just like Emmett Till. I forget the boy's name, but I can see his face all the time, darn it. Yeah, but again, white suspect, son of Staten Island murders, was brilliant, athletic. His demons were the death of him, right? And the black victim, when Trayvon was killed, Trayvon was suspended 3 times from school. Like, these are headlines. Like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? The black victim, Montgomery, latest homicide victim, had a history of narcotics abuse, tangled with law. It's always like, anytime something's happening, black people seem like something negative they're pulling out, and it's white headline, something positive. And that breeds into even the most recent thing. I'm sure everybody saw that, right? Nobody has a problem when our boy from LSU was out here doing the ring thing and winning or whatnot. She does the ring thing, and everybody has a big problem with it. The brilliant baller from Iowa, she's dope. She can do the you can't see me. I mean, she's cold. I don't want to guard her. But she can do the you can't see me. Angel Reese does it, and everybody has a big flare up. Oh, it's the worst thing in the world that's ever happened. Here's some shots from the Twitter, right? Just, hey, sorry, young lady, but I was enjoying your game, but your actions afterwards speaks volumes on the person. No thanks. I'll take classy winner and humility all day. You truly cheapened yourself with showing all this, right? Be a better person, but that's not what they say to Caitlin. That's the Iowa baller. When she does it, it's all good because white is right, the black is wrong. Again, Thomas Jefferson's all good, but what are we telling ourselves? This guy is just ridiculous. I know Twitter says you'll have an OnlyFans before you know it. Like, damn, like really? She's just an Uber, right? I mean, seriously. I mean, that's the level that people go to. Again, they feel comfortable saying that because of our conditioning where we're at. I know we only have a couple minutes. I do a whole section on protecting black women, but in general, even when it gets to the medical field, right? You can see 50% of medical doctors still believe old pseudoscience things about not only black women, but black people in general. They have tougher skin, they can handle more pain. They don't need as much emotional support. And so it's really hard for black women especially to get pain medications because these doctors truly believe that they can just handle more pain. Oh, you're lying, you're not really in pain. And these are real abstract studies showing these things. Racial bias in pain assessment, treatments, recommendations, false beliefs about biological differences between blacks and whites. It goes on and on. Really quick, I have to bring this up too. Anti-Asian hate bill. Now, the anti-Asian hate bill comes to the realization, this is from 2021, that there's a 140% increase in anti-Asian hate crimes. That's a problem for sure. but it amounts to 120 incidents in 2020. That's 2.4 per state in a year. In contrast, 2020 there were 2,400 hate crimes committed against black people. That's 48 per state per year. Right? Black folks, 13% of the population, Asians are 5% of the population. So they count that for the number, and to be at the same rate, which would be horrible, but to be at the same rate, Asians would have experienced hate crimes towards Asians would have been about 1,000 in the year, not 120. But what was the focus brought on when it came to a hate crime bill? It wasn't a hate crime bill for black people. Again, it was Asian hate crime bill. We need to pass this. This was the big focus before black people got their hate crime bill that came 2.5 years after. But it seems like black people always get the short end of the stick. And again, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. It's nothing against the Asians. I love my Asian brothers and sisters. But why are black people always not getting the priority that they deserve? And again, it goes back to who's on the walls, what our perceptions are, what we believe. So a couple tools that we need to use and realize, and I hope that we can bring this to help us. Historically, when I talk to black youth, and when we talk to black youth, if you're a caregiver, if you're a teacher, or working with black youth, we have to mind how we're speaking, because respect is a big thing. We haven't been given respect for the whole history of this country. And then we talk about, before this country, we always talk about there's no respect given even to our history. And so a lot of things are differently perceived. When we say no speaking, it's the equivalent of that shut up boy. Instead of no speaking, a lot of times it's like, hey, we're all trying to focus on one thing. We're all trying to be quiet to focus on one thing. Instead of just signaling out one person, hey, no speaking. Because that comes across as that shut up boy. A lot of times I see a lot of people, and I used to do this too, move up, hurry, move this way, hurry, let's go. We're talking to our whole group, right? That's like rustling a bunch of convicts together. What we hear a lot of times is, personal experiences, move, N-word, hurry up and move out the way, get up out of here, boy. And so again, we can think, hey, we're all collectively trying to go this way. We're all trying to go into this direction. We're all moving on to go and see this objective. Just this change in language can do a lot. No, you can't. A lot of times that no blacks allowed is what's perceived as, and especially coming from a white person. Now, that can be very, very easily done. Instead of putting the negative first, we can put the positive first. Let's say that boy says, hey, can we go and play checkers? It's like, no, you can't. You have to do something else, right? Just put the positive first. Oh, we can play checkers after we get this thing done that we're doing. After we go to this place, we'll all come back and we all can play games. And this is with younger kids, teenagers, junior high schoolers, right? Being able to change just the way we speak does a lot. It does a whole lot when it comes to that respect factor that we talk about. So like I said, we've been denied respect so long, we have to be mindful of things. Things that we think aren't a big deal are in fact a big deal because they've been a big deal for a long time. We've been seeded and brainwashed and whitewashed into these certain beliefs that have big effects that we can change by a little bit of change in the way we talk, the way we think, the way we perceive things. Really quick, don't fall into stereotypes. Right? I don't know how many times I hear people just ask black kids to be hoops. Right? Like coming to them, oh, I bet that you play ball. Dang, you can't do nothing else but play ball. I just had a group of 9 students from a business group that I run that we're in South Padre on our chill day. We're all down eating breakfast. Lady comes and she goes, oh, what team are y'all with? I bet you score a lot. And boy goes, we're actually a business club. She's like, oh. She went up to, yeah, right. She went up to her hotel room on the elevator. She came back down about 15 minutes later and apologized. She said, you know what? I'm truly tripping. I was out of line. I should have just assumed that you guys are basketball players. I'm sorry. You're a business group. You're wonderful. Do everything that you can do. Stay inspired. I thought it was beautiful how she came back and apologized. That was a black lady. So it isn't just a race thing. We're all affected by it. We are all affected. That was a black lady that just assumed they were hoopers. She came back down and was like, I'm tripping. I'm sorry. I should have assumed that, right? Don't assume drug use. Again, I've had students come to me, my business students come to me and say that they say they're going to a business class, I'm doing business, and they automatically say, oh, but you're selling drugs? People have said that to them, right? So we don't assume drug use, don't assume these worst stereotypes and things. Don't assume a broken home. I don't know how many times people just assume that people don't have daddies in the home. I know there's epidemics of that, but to assume that puts people back in that category of less and that objectivity again. And just don't accuse the activity that you don't have proof of. I think that's super important. And as I end this, I'd just like to say again, You have a choice when you leave here. You have a choice when you leave here, and I think it's a very important choice. That you can either continue to uphold psychopaths, murderers, human traffickers, and point-blank, cold-blooded killers as your heroes. And if you do that, you're going to continue to tell these black kids, these Native kids, and your black brothers and sisters that they're wrong. Or you can face this cognitive dissonance and say, you know what? They're not right. We're going to do better. We're going to find better heroes for kids. We're going to find better things to objectify, things to look up to, and we're going to change our whole mindset and how we do things. And that's my presentation today, and hopefully my challenge.